The windshield wipers on Maya's old Honda were fighting a losing battle against the rain. She leaned forward, squinting through the glass as the storm turned the quiet country road into a river of mud and debris. The weather report that morning had called for light showers. This was anything but light. Maya Rodriguez had been driving this same road home from Murphy's Diner for 2 years now, ever since she turned 16 and got her license. She knew every curve, every pothole, every landmark along the way. But tonight everything looked different. The familiar road had become a dangerous obstacle course of fallen branches and rushing water. She was thinking about her math test tomorrow when she saw the headlights ahead. At first she thought it was just another car taking the bend slowly because of the weather. Smart driver, she thought. But then the lights suddenly jerked to the right, cutting through the darkness in a way that made her stomach drop. "Oh no," she whispered, pressing harder on the gas pedal. The pickup truck had crashed through the metal guardrail like it was made of paper. Maya could see it sliding down the muddy embankment toward Willow Creek. The creek that was normally just a gentle trickle of water had turned into a raging monster. Swollen with rainwater and debris from the storm, Maya slammed on her brakes and pulled over, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Through the rain, she watched in horror as the truck hit the water with a splash that sent waves crashing against the banks. The vehicle bobbed for a moment like it was deciding whether to float or sink. Then the front end began to dip under the dark water. She grabbed her phone to call 911, but the screen showed no signal. The storm had knocked out the cell towers again, just like it did every time the weather got bad. Maya stared at the sinking truck, knowing that help was at least 20 minutes away, even if she could get through to someone. The truck was sinking faster now. She could see someone inside, slumped over the steering wheel. A cowboy hat floated beside the figure, and Maya realized the driver wasn't moving. "Come on, Maya," she said to herself, the same way her father used to encourage her when she was little and afraid to try something new. "You can do this." She popped open her trunk and grabbed the emergency kit her dad had made her promise to always carry. Inside was a flashlight, some flares, a first aid kit, and a tire iron. She stuffed the first aid supplies in her jacket pocket and grabbed the tire iron, then ran toward the creek. The water was freezing cold and moving faster than she had expected. Maya gasped as she stepped into the current, feeling it pull at her legs immediately. The truck was about 30 feet from shore, and the water between her and it was getting deeper with every step. She had been a good swimmer in high school, but this was different. This wasn't the calm water of the community pool. This was angry water, full of broken branches and who knew what else. But the person in that truck didn't have time for her to be scared. Maya pushed forward, fighting against the current that wanted to sweep her downstream. The water rose to her waist, then her chest. She could feel her feet slipping on the muddy bottom, but she kept going. The truck was sinking lower now, water pouring in through the cracked windshield. When she finally reached the vehicle, Maya could see the driver clearly for the first time. It was a man, probably in his 40s, wearing work clothes and boots. His face was pale and there was blood on his forehead. The water inside the truck was already up to his chest. "Sir," Maya shouted, pounding on the passenger window. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man didn't respond. His eyes were closed and his body was completely limp. Maya realized she had maybe 2 minutes before the truck went completely under. She raised the tire iron and smashed it against the passenger window. The glass spiderwebbed but didn't break. Maya hit it again, harder this time, putting all her strength behind the blow. On the third try, the window finally gave way, sending glass and water rushing out. Maya reached through the broken window and grabbed the unconscious man under his arms. He was heavier than she expected and dead weight besides. The truck lurched deeper into the water, and Maya felt panic rise in her throat. If she didn't get him out in the next few seconds, they were both going to drown. She braced her feet against the side of the truck and pulled with everything she had. The man's body came free from the driver's seat, but now Maya had to get both of them back to shore against a current that seemed determined to drag them downstream. The swim back was the longest 30 feet of Maya's life. She kept the man's head above water while kicking as hard as she could, fighting to keep them both from being swept away. Her lungs burned and her muscles screamed, but she refused to let go. She could hear her father's voice in her head, the same thing he used to say when she wanted to quit during swim practice. "Just keep going, mija. One stroke at a time." When Maya's feet finally touched the muddy bank, she almost cried with relief. She dragged the unconscious man up onto solid ground, both of them soaking wet and covered in mud. Behind them, The pickup truck disappeared beneath the dark water with a final gurgle. Maya knelt beside the man and checked for a pulse. It was there, but weak. He wasn't breathing. She tilted his head back, pinched his nose, and began mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, the way she had learned in the CPR class her mother had insisted she take last summer. "Come on," she whispered between breaths. "Come on, breathe." After what felt like forever, the man suddenly coughed, spitting up river water. His eyes fluttered open, confused and unfocused. Maya almost sobbed with relief. "Hey, you're okay," she said, her voice shaky. "You're going to be okay. I'm Maya. You were in an accident." The man tried to sit up, but Maya gently pressed him back down. "Just stay still. Help is coming." "My truck," he said weakly, his voice rough and gravelly. "Don't worry about the truck," Maya said. "The important thing is that you're alive." The man looked at her then, really looked at her as if he was seeing her for the first time. His eyes were a surprising shade of blue, and despite the pain and confusion, there was something warm in them. "You saved my life," he said simply. Maya felt her cheeks flush. Anyone would have done the same thing. But even as she said it, she could see in his expression that he didn't believe that was true. And deep down, Maya wasn't sure she believed it either. In the distance, she could finally hear the sound of sirens getting closer. Help was on the way. But as she sat there in the rain, holding a stranger's hand while they waited for the ambulance, Maya had no idea that this moment would change everything about her life. She had no idea that the humble cowboy she had just pulled from a sinking truck would soon turn her world upside down in the most wonderful way possible. The ambulance, lights painted everything red and blue as the paramedics worked on the man Maya had pulled from the river. She stood off to the side, still dripping wet and shivering, watching as they checked his vital signs and loaded him onto a stretcher. "Miss, you should come with us too," one of the paramedics said to Maya. "You need to be checked out. That was quite a swim you took." Maya shook her head. "I'm fine, really. Just take care of him." But the man on the stretcher turned his head toward her voice. "Please," he said, his words still a bit slurred from the accident. "I'd feel better knowing you're okay too. It's the least I can do." 20 minutes later, Maya found herself sitting in the emergency room of Cedar Falls General Hospital, wrapped in a warm blanket and sipping hot chocolate that tasted like it came from a machine. The nurses had insisted on checking her over, but aside from some scrapes and being cold and wet, she was perfectly fine. The man from the truck was in the room next to hers, separated only by a thin curtain. She could hear the doctors talking to him, asking questions about his name, the date, what he remembered. Standard stuff for someone who had hit their head. "Jake Morrison," she heard him say when they asked his name. His voice was clearer now, stronger. "I'm 43 years old, and yes, I know what year it is." Maya smiled to herself. At least he was alert enough to sound annoyed with the doctors. That was probably a good sign. About an hour later, after the doctors had finished their tests, Jake appeared in the doorway of her room. He looked different under the bright hospital lights. His hair was still damp and messy, and he had a small bandage over the cut on his forehead, but his eyes were sharp and focused now. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. "Of course," Maya said, setting down her cup. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Jake said with a wry smile. Which, considering I was in a truck that hit a tree, I guess is pretty accurate. He pulled up a chair next to her bed and sat down heavily. Maya noticed his hands. They were rough and calloused, the hands of someone who did real work for a living. There was a thin scar across his knuckles, and his fingernails were clean but short, practical. "The doctors say I have a mild concussion and some bruised ribs," Jake continued. "They want to keep me overnight for observation, but I should be fine. Thanks to you." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "You don't need to thank me, really." "Yes, I do," Jake said firmly. "What you did back there, that took real courage. Most people would have stayed in their car and called for help." "My phone didn't have signal," Maya said. "And besides, there wasn't time to wait for help. You would have drowned." Jake studied her face for a moment. "How old are you, if you don't mind, May?" "He asking?" 17, Maya said. "I'll be 18 in a few months." 17, Jake repeated, shaking his head. "When I was 17, I was afraid to ask a girl to the school dance." "You jumped into a flooded river to save a complete stranger," Maya laughed. "I was scared too. I was terrified. But you can't let fear stop you from doing what's right, you know?" Something in Jake's expression shifted, like he was seeing something in Maya that surprised him. "Your parents raised you right," he said quietly. "My mom did," Maya said. "My dad died when I was 12. Cancer." "I'm sorry," Jake said, and Maya could tell he really meant it. "He was a good man," Maya said. "He always told me that we're put here to help each other. That's what makes us human." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Maya found herself curious about this man she had saved. He didn't look rich or important. His clothes were ordinary, worn jeans, a flannel shirt, scuffed work boots. But there was something about him, a quiet confidence that suggested he was used to being in charge of things. "So what do you do?" Maya asked. "I mean, for work?" "I'm in agriculture," Jake said, which wasn't exactly a lie. "I own some land, raise cattle, that sort of thing." "What about you?" "Besides rescuing people from rivers, I mean." Maya grinned. "I work at Murphy's Diner after school and on weekends. I'm a senior at Cedar Falls High, planning to go to community college next year." "What do you want to study?" "Veterinary medicine," Maya said, her whole face lighting up. "I've wanted to be a vet since I was little. I love animals, and there aren't enough large animal vets around here. Farmers have to drive 2 hours to get someone to look at their cattle or horses." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That's a good career. Important work. College is expensive, though." Maya's smile faded just a little. "Yeah, it is. But I've been saving up and I'll get student loans. It'll work out somehow. It has to." There was something in her voice, a determination mixed with worry that made Jake's chest tighten. Here was a girl who had just risked her life to save a stranger, who worked hard to help support her family, who had big dreams and the character to achieve them, and she was worried about money. "I'm sure it will," Jake said gently. "Someone like you, with your heart and your work ethic, you'll find a way." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Visiting hours are ending soon," she announced. Maya stood up, suddenly realizing she was still wearing the hospital gown over her damp clothes. "I should get going anyway. My mom will be worried sick when she hears about this." "Wait," Jake said, reaching into his wallet. "Let me give you something for gas money at least. And maybe you could give me your number. I'd like to stay in touch, make sure you're doing okay." "I don't want your money," Maya said firmly. "But I'll give you my number if you promise to call and let me know how you're feeling in a few days." Jake smiled. "Deal." Maya wrote her name and phone number on a piece of paper from the bedside table. As she handed it to him, Jake noticed her handwriting was neat and careful like everything else about her. "Maya Rodriguez." Jake read aloud. "Thank you, Maya Rodriguez, for everything. Take care of yourself, Jake," Maya said, "and be more careful driving in storms, okay?" Jake watched her walk away, noting how she stopped to thank the nurses and ask how their shifts were going, how she helped an elderly man who was struggling with his walker, how she smiled at everyone she passed. Even after what she had been through tonight, she was thinking about other people. After Maya left, Jake sat alone in his hospital room, staring at the piece of paper with her phone number on it. He thought about her dream of becoming a veterinarian, about her working at a diner to save money for college, about her jumping into a raging river to save his life without thinking twice about her own safety. Jake Morrison had met a lot of people in his 43 years. He had sat in boardrooms with billionaires, shaken hands with politicians, been to parties with celebrities. But he couldn't remember the last time he had met someone who impressed him as much as Maya Rodriguez. She had no idea who he really was, and that was probably for the best right now. But Jake was already forming a plan. Maya Rodriguez deserved better than worrying about student loans and working at a diner to chase her dreams. And Jake Morrison was in a position to do something about it. Tomorrow he would start making some calls. Tonight, though, he would just lie here and think about a 17-year-old girl who had restored his faith in human nature, one brave act at a time. Jake Morrison had been many things in his 43 years, but patient had never been one of them. Yet here he was, 3 days after the accident, sitting in his rental car across the street from Murphy's Diner, waiting to catch a glimpse of the girl who had saved his life. The doctors had cleared him to leave the hospital the morning after the accident, but Jake hadn't gone home to his penthouse in the city or to any of his other properties. Instead, he had checked into the Pineview Motel on the outskirts of Cedar Falls, a small town he had driven through countless times but never really noticed. Now he was noticing everything. Cedar Falls was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, where the biggest excitement was usually the high school football games on Friday nights. It was also the kind of place where a 17-year-old girl worked evenings at a diner to help her mother pay the bills. Jake had spent the last 2 days quietly asking questions around town. Not in an obvious way. He wasn't some detective conducting interviews. He was just a friendly guy, still recovering from a car accident, who liked to chat with people while he drank his coffee at the hardware store or bought supplies at the grocery store. The picture that emerged broke his heart. Maya Rodriguez was exactly who she seemed to be. The daughter of Maria Rodriguez, who worked 3 different cleaning jobs to keep them afloat after her husband died of cancer 5 years ago. Maya had been working at Murphy's since she turned 16, not for spending money like most teenagers, but to help with rent and groceries and to save every penny she could for college. That girl is something special. Betty Murphy had told Jake when he stopped in for lunch yesterday. Betty was the owner of the diner, a woman in her 60s who had known Maya since she was little. Never missed a shift, never complained. Always has a smile for the customers. And smart as a whip, too. Honor roll every semester. Jake had learned that Maya tutored younger kids for free, that she volunteered at the animal shelter on Sundays, that she had turned down dates to homecoming and prom because she couldn't afford a dress and didn't want to put that burden on her mother. He learned that Maria Rodriguez was too proud to accept charity but worked herself to exhaustion trying to give her daughter opportunities she never had. The Rodriguezes lived in a tiny apartment above Henderson's hardware store, paying month-to-month rent because they couldn't afford a security deposit anywhere else. Now Jake sat in his car, watching Maya through the diner window as she served customers with the same genuine kindness she had shown him at the hospital. She was wearing the standard Murphy's uniform, a yellow polo shirt and black pants, and her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked impossibly young to be carrying so much responsibility. As Jake watched, Maya delivered food to an elderly couple in the corner booth. The old man seemed to be having trouble reading the menu, so Maya sat down next to him and patiently read through all the options, making recommendations based on what she knew he liked. When they finished ordering, she squeezed the old woman's hand and asked about their grandson who was serving overseas. This was who Maya Rodriguez was. This was the person who had jumped into a flooded river to save his life without knowing anything about him, except that he needed help. Jake's phone buzzed. A text from his assistant in the city. Board meeting moved to Thursday. The Peterson deal needs your approval by tomorrow. He stared at the phone for a moment, then turned it off. Jake Morrison was one of the richest men in the country, though most people wouldn't know it to look at him. He had built Morrison Industries from nothing, starting as a farmhand in Nebraska before inventing a revolutionary piece of harvesting equipment that changed agriculture forever. The patents alone were worth hundreds of millions, but Jake had kept innovating, kept growing his company, always remembering where he came from. He was worth almost $3 billion, owned ranches in 6 states, and had business interests on 4 continents. His company employed over 50,000 people worldwide. He could buy and sell entire towns like Cedar Falls without thinking twice about it, but he had never forgotten what it was like to be poor. Jake's own father had died when he was young, leaving his mother to raise 3 children on a waitress's salary. He remembered the shame of using food stamps, the embarrassment of wearing clothes from the church donation box, the constant worry about whether they would have enough money for rent. He also remembered the kindness of strangers, the teacher who bought him new shoes when his had holes in them, the neighbor who always seemed to cook too much food and would bring over the extras, the high school counselor who helped him apply for college scholarships he never would have known existed. People had helped Jake Morrison when he had nothing to offer in return. Now he was in a position to return that favor, and Maya Rodriguez had given him the perfect opportunity. Through the diner window, Jake watched May. Cleaning tables, her movements efficient but unhurried. She stopped to chat with a trucker at the counter, asking about his family, remembering details from previous conversations. The man's weathered face lit up as he showed her pictures of his granddaughter. Jake pulled out his phone and made a call. Morrison Industries. This is Patricia. Patricia, it's Jake. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to be very quiet about it. Of course, sir. What do you need? I want you to set up a meeting with Tom Bradley at the foundation office. Tell him I want to establish a new scholarship program, and I want it done immediately. Full ride scholarships for students pursuing veterinary medicine. How many scholarships, sir? Jake watched Maya refill a customer's coffee cup, saw her genuine smile as she asked about the woman's sick husband. Let's start with one very specific recipient in mind. A girl named Maya Rodriguez in Cedar Falls. But make it look legitimate, like she's just the first recipient, not the only reason for the program. I understand. What should the selection criteria be? Academic excellence, financial need, and... Jake paused, thinking about Maya pulling him from that sinking truck. And demonstrated character. Community service, helping others, that sort of thing. I'll have the paperwork drawn up by tomorrow. Should the scholarship be anonymous? Jake considered this. Maya was proud like her mother. She might not accept help if she knew it came from him personally, but she might accept a legitimate scholarship from a foundation. Make it from the Morrison Foundation, but don't mention my connection to it unless she asks directly. Present it as a competitive scholarship that she won based on merit. Yes, sir. Anything else? Jake watched Maya say goodbye to the elderly couple, helping them with their coats and walking them to the door despite the busy dinner rush. Actually, yes. I want you to look into the family's living situation, quietly. If there are ways we can help without it seeming like charity, I want to know about them. After he hung up, Jake sat in his car for another hour, just watching Maya work. She had no idea that her life was about to change. She didn't know that the humble cowboy she had saved from the river was already working to ensure she would never have to choose between her dreams and her family's financial security. Tomorrow, Jake would walk into Murphy's diner and order coffee from the girl who had saved his life. He would sit at the counter and make small talk, just another customer to her. But he would also be watching, making sure his plan would work, making sure Maya Rodriguez got the future she deserved. Because sometimes, Jake thought as he finally started his car, saving someone's life isn't just about pulling them from a river. Sometimes it's about giving them the chance to become everything they're meant to be. Maya was wiping down the counter at Murphy's diner when she heard the familiar jingle of the bell above the front door. It was Tuesday evening. The dinner rush was winding down and she was looking forward to getting home to study for her chemistry test. But when she looked up to greet the new customer, her face broke into a genuine smile. "Jake," she said, setting down her cleaning cloth. "What are you doing here?" Jake Morrison stood in the doorway, looking exactly the same as he had at the hospital a week ago. Same worn jeans, same flannel shirt, same humble cowboy hat. The only difference was the small bandage over his left eyebrow, a reminder of the accident that had brought them together. "Hey there," Jake said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. See how my guardian angel is doing." Maya felt her cheeks warm at the compliment, but she busied herself grabbing a menu and a glass of water. "How are you feeling? Any more headaches?" "Good as new," Jake said, accepting the water with a grateful nod. "Doctor said I was lucky. Could have been much worse if someone hadn't pulled me out of that river." "Don't start with that again," Maya said, but she was smiling. "What can I get you?" "The meatloaf is really good tonight." "Coffee's fine for now," Jake said. "I'm not actually that hungry. Just wanted to check on you." Maya poured him a cup from the fresh pot and leaned against the counter. The diner was mostly empty now except for old Mr. Peterson in his usual booth and a couple of truckers by the window. "So how's school going?" Jake asked. "It's good. Busy, but good. I'm taking college prep classes this year, trying to keep my grades up for scholarship applications." Maya refilled his coffee cup even though he had barely touched it. "What about you? Are you back to work yet?" "Yeah, I've been making some calls, taking care of business," Jake said, which was technically true. He had spent the morning on the phone with his lawyers, setting up the scholarship program. "Actually, that reminds me. I've been thinking about what you said at the hospital, about wanting to be a veterinarian." "Oh, that," Maya said, suddenly looking embarrassed. "I probably talked your ear off about that. Sometimes I get carried away when I talk about animals. No, I liked hearing about it. You should be excited about your dreams." Jake pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card. "I know this might sound strange, but I have a friend who works with agricultural organizations. They're always looking for bright kids who want to work with livestock. I thought maybe you could give him a call sometime. See if he has any advice about veterinary school." Maya took the card and glanced at it quickly before slipping it into her apron pocket. "That's really nice of you, but you don't have to do that." "I want to," Jake said simply. "You saved my life, Maya. The least I can do is try to help you with yours." They talked for another 20 minutes about school, her job, her mother's work. Jake was amazed again by Maya's maturity and kindness. When a customer at another table needed something, she excused herself politely and took care of them with the same attention she had given Jake. When the cook called out that he was running low on clean dishes, Maya rolled up her sleeves and helped wash a load without being asked. "I should let you get back to work," Jake said finally, leaving a $20 bill on the counter for his $2 cup of coffee. "Jake, this is way too much," Maya protested. "Keep it," Jake said, standing up. "Good service deserves a good tip." Maya wanted to argue, but Jake was already walking toward the door. "It was really good to see you," she called after him. Jake turned back with that same warm smile she remembered from the hospital. "Take care of yourself, Maya, and don't forget to call that number." After Jake left, Maya finished her shift with the business card burning a hole in her pocket. She kept meaning to look at it, but the diner got busy again, and then her mother called to ask her to pick up groceries on the way home. And by the time she finally got to their small apartment above the hardware store, she had almost forgotten about it. Maya's mother, Maria, was sitting at their tiny kitchen table, paying bills by the light of a desk lamp. She looked up when Maya came in, her face tired but warm. "How was work, mija?" Maria asked in Spanish. "Good. Busy," Maya replied, also in Spanish, setting the grocery bag on the counter. "The man from the accident came by. The one I told you about, Jake? The cowboy?" Maria smiled. "That was nice of him. How is he feeling?" "Much better. He gave me a business card for someone who might be able to help with veterinary school. Advice." Maya pulled the card from her pocket and looked at it for the first time under the kitchen light. The card was simple but elegant, printed on expensive paper. It read, "Jacob Morrison, CEO, Morrison Industries," with a phone number and an address in the state capital. Maya stared at the name. Jacob Morrison. Something about it seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. "What kind of business is it?" Maria asked, looking over her daughter's shoulder. "Morrison Industries," Maya read aloud. "I think I've heard that name before." Maria frowned. "Morrison Industries. Isn't that the big company that makes farm equipment? I think they sponsor the county fair every year." Maya's heart started beating faster. She walked over to their old laptop, which was sitting on the kitchen counter, and opened it. The internet connection was slow, but eventually she was able to search for Morrison Industries. The results made her jaw drop. Morrison Industries was one of the largest agricultural equipment companies in the world. They had factories in dozens of countries and annual revenues in the billions. And the CEO, according to the company website, was Jacob "Jake" Morrison, age 43. Maya clicked on the About Us section and found a small biography. Jacob Morrison had started as a farmhand before inventing revolutionary harvesting equipment. He had built his company from nothing and was now worth an estimated $2.8 billion. The website mentioned his commitment to rural communities and his humble background, but it was the small photo next to the biography that made Maya's hands shake. Even though it showed Jake in a business suit instead of work clothes, even though his hair was styled differently, there was no mistaking those blue eyes and that quiet, confident smile. The humble cowboy she had pulled from Willow Creek was one of the richest men in the country. "Mija, what's wrong?" Maria asked, noticing Maya's expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya turned the laptop around so her mother could see the screen. "Mama, the man I saved from the river. He's not just some rancher. He's Jacob Morrison. He's worth billions of dollars." Maria stared at the screen, then at her daughter, then back at the screen. "This is the man who came to Murphy's tonight." "The one who gave you the business card?" "Yes," Maya whispered, "and he's been pretending to be just a regular person this whole time." Mother and daughter sat in stunned silence, both staring at the computer screen. Maya's mind was racing. Why hadn't Jake told her who he really was? Why had he pretended to be just another working man? And more importantly, what did this mean? "He must have had his reasons," Maria said finally. "Rich people. They probably get tired of everyone treating them differently because of their money." Maya nodded, but she felt confused and a little hurt. Had Jake been lying to her this whole time? Had their conversations meant anything to him? Or was she just some small-town girl he felt sorry for? Then she remembered the way he had looked at her in the hospital. The genuine gratitude in his voice, the warmth in his eyes when he talked to her at the diner. That hadn't been fake. Whatever else was going on, Jake's appreciation for what she had done had been real. Maya looked at the business card again, running her thumb over the raised letters of his name. Jacob Morrison, CEO. The man whose life she had saved wasn't just any man. He was someone who could probably buy her entire town without thinking twice about it. And for some reason, he had chosen to sit at her counter and drink coffee, talking to her like she was the most important person in the world. Maya didn't know what this revelation meant for her future, but she had a feeling her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. The question was she ready for it? Maya barely slept that night. She kept thinking about Jake sitting at the diner counter, drinking coffee and talking to her like he was just any other person. Meanwhile, he was worth more money than she could even imagine. By morning, she had decided she needed to talk to him face to face. She called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years, which made Betty Murphy so worried she offered to bring Maya soup. Instead, Maya drove to the Pineview Motel, the only place in Cedar Falls where an out-of-town visitor would stay. Sure enough, Jake's rental car was parked outside room 12. Maya knocked on the door, her heart pounding. When Jake opened it, he was wearing the same type of simple clothes as always, but now Maya saw them differently. This wasn't a working man's uniform. This was a billionaire choosing to dress like everyone else. Maya? Jake looked surprised but pleased to see her. Is everything okay? We need to talk, Maya said, holding up his business card. About who you really are. Jake's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Oh, relief. Come in, he said, stepping aside. The motel room was basic and clean, nothing fancy. Jake had been staying here for over a week now, but there were no signs of wealth anywhere. Just a simple suitcase, some books, and a laptop on the small table. You looked me up, Jake said. It wasn't a question. Jacob Morrison, Maya said, crossing her arms. CEO of Morrison Industries. Worth almost $3 billion. Why didn't you tell me? Jake sat down on the edge of the bed and gestured for Maya to take the room's single chair. Would it have changed anything if I had? I don't know, Maya said honestly. Maybe. Probably. That's why I didn't tell you. Jake leaned forward, his hands clasped together. Maya, do you have any idea what it's like to never know if people like you for who you are? Or for what you can give them? To wonder if every friendship, every conversation, every relationship is based on your bank account? Maya felt some of her anger melting away. She had never thought about it like that. When I woke up in that hospital and you were sitting there, worried about a complete stranger, not asking for anything, not wanting anything except to make sure I was okay. Jake shook his head. I haven't met anyone like you in 20 years. I wanted to keep that feeling for as long as I could. But you lied to me, Maya said quietly. I never lied to you. I told you I was in agriculture, which I am. I told you I owned land and raised cattle, which I do. I just didn't mention the other parts. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing this. The business card you gave me last night, that wasn't really for a friend who works with agricultural organizations, was it? Jake smiled ruefully. No, it wasn't. Maya, I've spent the last week learning everything I can about you and your family. Not in a creepy way, he added quickly, seeing her expression. But I needed to understand your situation before I could help. Help with what? Instead of answering, Jake walked over to his laptop and turned it on. There are some things I need to show you, but first I want you to understand something. What I'm about to offer you has nothing to do with pity or charity. It has everything to do with the fact that you're exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. Jake pulled up a website and turned the laptop toward Maya. This is the Morrison Foundation. I established it 3 years ago to help young people pursue careers that benefit rural communities. Yesterday, I created a new scholarship program specifically for veterinary medicine. Maya stared at the screen. The website showed a professional-looking foundation with programs for education, rural development, and community support. Under the new programs section was a heading that made her heart skip, the Maya Rodriguez Veterinary Scholarship Program. You named it after me? Maya whispered. You're the first recipient, Jake said. Full tuition, room and board, books, everything you need to get through veterinary school. Plus a guaranteed internship program with some of the best large animal practices in the country. Maya felt tears starting in her eyes. Jake, I can't accept this. It's too much. Yes, you can. And there's more. Jake pulled up another document. I bought the building where you and your mother live. Not to kick you out, he said quickly, seeing her panicked expression. I bought it to make sure you never have to worry about rent again. Your mother will be the building manager with a salary that's triple what she's making now from all her cleaning jobs combined. Maya was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you saved my life," Jake said simply. "But not just from the river. Maya, I've been rich for a long time, but somewhere along the way I forgot what it felt like to meet someone genuinely good. Someone who helps others without expecting anything back. Someone who works hard and stays humble and treats everyone with kindness." Jake sat down across from Maya, his voice gentle but serious. "You reminded me why I started my company in the first place. Why I make the money I make. It's not to buy fancy things or impress people. It's to have the power to change lives. To help people like you become everything you're meant to be." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What if I'm not smart enough for veterinary school? What if I fail?" "You won't fail," Jake said with complete certainty. "But even if you struggle, even if it takes longer than expected, the support will be there. This isn't a one-time gift, Maya. This is an investment in your future, and in all the animals and farmers you're going to help someday." Maya looked at the laptop screen again, seeing her name on the scholarship program. It felt surreal, like something that happened to other people in movies, not to 17-year-old girls from small towns. "There's one condition," Jake said. Maya's heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. The catch. "When you become a veterinarian, I want you to come back to rural communities like this one. Help farmers who can't afford big city vet bills. Teach other young people that they can achieve their dreams too." "Pass it forward," Maya laughed through her tears. "That's what I wanted to do anyway." "I know," Jake said, smiling. "That's why I knew this was right." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Maya trying to absorb the magnitude of what had just happened. Her entire future had changed in the space of 20 minutes. "Jake?" Maya said finally. "Yeah?"
"Can I hug you?"
"Because I'm pretty sure this makes you the best person I've ever met." Billionaire or not, Jake stood up and opened his arms, and Maya hugged him tight, still crying, but now from gratitude and joy instead of confusion. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything, thank you," Jake replied. "For showing me what real courage looks like. For reminding me why kindness matters. For saving my life in more ways than one." 5 years later, Dr. Maya Rodriguez opened her veterinary practice in Cedar Falls, right across the street from Murphy's Diner. Her first patient was a sick calf belonging to Mr. Peterson, the elderly farmer who used to sit in the corner booth at the diner. Jake Morrison was there for the grand opening, wearing his usual jeans and flannel shirt, looking like just another local rancher. He watched with pride as Maya tended to her patients with the same gentle care she had shown him that night by the river. Sometimes, Maya thought as she worked, the most extraordinary things grow from the simplest acts of human decency. All she had done was help someone who needed help. In return, she had gained not just an education and a career, but a reminder that in a world that often felt cold and divided, there were still people willing to risk everything for a stranger. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that stranger turned out to have the power to change your life forever.